I'm ready.
It's your best angle. You're not allowed to always stare at this camera, okay?
No.
Hi, my name's Flossie, Florence of Create Magic, and thank you so much for watching. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to deal with what we would call the difficult tarot cards. So I think we will start with setting a circle, an intention, and doing a cleansing. But first of all, thank you and welcome to my lovely guest.
Thanks for having me. I'm Myra. I think my channel will be in the description.
Yeah, one of my beautiful witchy friends, and also who is part of my queer tarot cards. So I will talk a bit more about that in a second.
I draw the vanishing pentagrams, and I would like you to visualize as I draw them flaming blue fire, and it banishes the lower astral entities of all four directions. Okay, now we cast our circle. We visualize a circle of light encircling us in this space, sealing off this area so that it can be appropriate for our ritual. We call the quarters. Hail to the element of air to the direction of east. We invite you to come to our sacred space and oversee this circle and our ritual. Lend us your power, air. Hail and you're welcome.
Hail to the element of fire, the direction of south. May you bring your fiery warmth and cleansing flames. Hail and welcome.
Hail to the direction of west, the element of water. Come to oversee our ritual and lend us your power. Come, great ocean, primordial ocean of energy. Hail and welcome.
Hail to the element of earth, to the north. Mother Earth, the grounding, warm dirt beneath us. The Mother Earth which we come from and shall return to. Hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome. By the air that is her breath, by the fire of her spirit, by the waters of her living womb, and by the earth beneath her feet, the circle is cast and we're between worlds. Let the ritual begin.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Tarot is my primary medium for my witchy work, and I've had the Emperor card come up for me a lot. And as a little bit of a feminist and a queer person, the traditional masculinity and strong, overbearing, controlling vibe of it just really hasn't related. So I was wondering, well, how do I deal with this card? It's come up so much. What do I do? And how do I process this? What does it mean to me? The other part is I am putting together a queer deck of tarot cards, some of which you see here. These are little prototypes. And nobody's picked the Emperor yet. And I'm like, well, there's some sort of distance people are putting, or some sort of fear of it. And even you expressed when we were talking about shooting, you were like, oh, a difficult one.
Yeah, when Florence told me that we were going to be doing a ritual and video on the Emperor, I'm like, oh my god, like, what, mask for mask, like, my life, I hate that.
I have a whole bunch of cards from a couple of different decks. This is one from your deck, which I think looks like a Viking warrior. This one here is from Shadowscapes, which is a beautiful elfin creature, and he's holding a crystal ball, and he's got the ankh in there. I love this one, which is the Wild Unknown, because it doesn't express any gender. and renaming the Emperor is something I wanted to do for my queer tarot cards, because the Emperor is such a heavily masc card, and if you're not able to reframe that as something that you can resonate with, or maybe you do resonate with it, but maybe you don't resonate with it all the time, it limits the way you can connect with it.
Yeah.
I have 3 cards remaining that do not interpret it in the common way. Maybe there's more, but I only happen to find these 3. One called Organisation, one called the Rebel, and one called the Navigator. This fascinates me because we've cast aside the traditional super masc interpretations. Cast it aside. We do not need this in our lives anymore. No.
Get out that toxic masculinity.
No more toxic masculinity. Letting go of the patriarchy, and really truly embracing this card for what it means without that gendered thing. It's a ship finding this beautiful thing. So if you looked at that, how would you, as a seasoned tarot reader yourself?
I think that if this card came up in a reading, I wouldn't necessarily associate it with the Emperor, but I guess a misinterpretation of it. The Navigator represents going up. It's almost like the Hermit, I'd say. Is that the number 4? Yeah, it is. It reminds me of the Hermit card, because it's someone going on a big journey. You can see the ocean, and there's the different kinds of stars. And
that's actually really interesting, because when you talk about the Emperor, you don't talk about emotions and feelings.
No.
So to me, when I look at the Navigator, I say they are strong and they are supportive, but they're not emotionally connected. They're not emotionally, they are potentially emotionally repressed.
It seems a bit rigid.
Rigid and stable, but not there as an emotional support for you. So if you need an emotional support, then obviously this person will point you in the right direction, but it's going to be purely practical advice. Taking that on board and going, okay, what about us as queer people? What is our relationship with power?
I think that for a lot of us, we have a very negative relationship with power. Is that there are a lot of structural barriers, institutionalized barriers. My personal experience with power, external to me, has always been very negative. Every time someone tries to control me in a way, or every time that I've been boxed into something, I always try to find every way out. Or when right now I'm dealing with the legal system and that kind of power structure, before I had to deal with the police because of some issue, and power to me has never had a very positive meaning. But at the same
I'm just like, yes, I want to talk about all of these things.
But at the same time, I think that a huge part of me coming into my new life as a woman and transitioning has been taking back my power and stepping into my place of power, where I'm no longer the fool that kind of steps around, wanders around, but I'm stepping onto my own throne. I'm becoming my own emperor, in a sense. And, yeah.
And I think that's super empowering, because as a community, queer people need to own their worth, but also there's a part activist in this. We can step up and challenge the legal system, create change, and this whole part talks about taking control. And if we're talking about taking control, the first thing that we should be able to take control of is ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes that, as queer people, means taking back control, or owning ourselves and owning our worth.
Yeah.
And our value.
It just reminds me, recently we've had the Australian postal vote, the big plebiscite, and that was a big yes. So that was, the LGBT community taking back their right to marriage. And
but you look at that, and we had to deal with it in a very unemotive way.
Yeah.
We had to toughen up, grow a thick skin, and go, this is a time for facts.
Yeah.
It really resonates with that navigating our way through chaos by structure and organization and control.
Another situation that it reminds me of is recently, within the past week actually, I think transgender lawyers or something of that sort, basically young trans people no longer have to go to the court or have to get their documents signed off by a judge or something if they want to enter stage 2 of their hormone replacement therapy, which is wonderful because, there were so many young trans people they had blocked they had puberty blockers, but they weren't able to access the second stage, and that was so important for them. And it can stunt your growth and have very negative health side effects if you don't have that kind of power to make decisions for yourself. Yeah, so I'm really glad that we've been making strides as the queer community together, but also at the same time in our own lives, we've been making a lot of progress in taking back our own power, asserting ourselves where we need to be, assertive.
When I look at the Emperor, I think as a boss bitch, or a CEO, or a person who has their own business. And as two people here, I work for myself part-time, and anyone with that entrepreneurial spirit, that is the Emperor. What can often happen is we end up as solo practitioners, we end up isolated, we end up by ourselves, and that can be really isolating. And even you can see that in this card. This is a ship kind of lost but navigating by the stars. If I was doing a reading for somebody, I would be like, where's your community? Find your community. Or if I was looking at it from a reverse direction, I'd be like, do you need some alone time to go and navigate by the stars and find yourself? This one, which is from the Osho Tarot, is called The Rebel, and I like thinking it as the creative rebel.
Yes. It actually reminds me of Guru Rinpoche. It looks like him, but in a very different way. Guru Rinpoche, by the way, was the man who converted Tibet to Buddhism. And he was a very dynamic, creative person. He brought structure and, because the Osho Zen Tarot carries heavy Buddhist imagery.
Very Buddhist, and I love that part of it.
It just reminds me of him because he had to think of a lot of creative ways, and he brought this sense of structure to Tibet.
So practical application, setting boundaries.
Yes.
Can be
100%.
Can be something that's very important. Setting expectations, especially in a relationship.
Yeah, that's so important because so often we can lose ourselves in another person or in this kind of mindset of fantasy. And part of taking back your power or embodying the archetype of the Emperor is about setting your boundaries and saying where no means no, to say where your cutoff of comfortability is.
Other practical application, which I kind of love, especially in the queer community, is that the Emperor can often represent in a dynamic, I won't say relationship, in a dynamic between people, in a fetish or kink scenario, where you have somebody who is in control and somebody who is a top or a bottom.
The dom.
The dom.
Or the top.
But interestingly, when you explore that power and control in a kink or a fetish dynamic, there is a balance, there is an equality. In fact, the balance of power is potentially more with the person being submissive. They have the right, in being at a really consensual play session, to say no, to say stop, say I check out. So yes, they're consensually giving that power to somebody, but what an amazing dynamic to take back. How wonderful is this way of taking ownership and control of this archetype and embodying it for ourselves.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. If you were doing a reading or you're doing a reading for yourself and you pull this card, you could also look for a way of, am I in this space so much? Am I being my CEO of my life, organizing the shit out of it, and not caring for myself and not taking time to step off that, take your foot off the accelerator.
Yeah, I guess that's where the Empress comes in.
And they're the yin and yang, and it's so beautiful to say, well, you can be powerful in that, but powerfully nurturing.
Exactly. It's beautiful.
I think that's all I have to say.
Yes.
Let's do a little ritual.
Shall we?
We've got our little homemade incense, and we'll put the recipe for this incense in the description box below.
It's actually, funnily enough, available on my Etsy store. It's Psychic Clarity, but a lot of the ingredients also have associations with power and a sense of strength, that spice, the power. There's dragon's blood and cinnamon, star aniseed,
Fennel.
fennel, juniper berries.
If you're doing this at home, think of an intention. Think of why you're doing this. What do you need to heal in yourself? And do your own little ritual.
Ooh.
And you can join us.
Next.
I acknowledge my power. I acknowledge that I have been burnt out, and that this last few months, especially with the plebiscite, has been very full on. And that together we are amazing.
I would like to step into my own power. Release the bondages of my upbringing, the impositions of other people. And I become truly unfolding myself as I was. Oh, it smells so good. We visualize our intention, traveling up towards the astral realms. Our tension is dispersed. We ground our intention back into the plane of the earth. So
To be.
we thank you, element of earth, for coming into our space and lending us your power. Hail and farewell.
We thank you, element of water, of the west. Wash away all of that dross, those emotions and those feelings and experiences are no longer needed, and free us. Hail and farewell.
Hail to the element of fire and to the direction of self. We thank you for lending us your power and overseeing our ritual. As you so burn within our hearts, so empower us to take our power back. Let us achieve justice and power. Hail and farewell.
Hail and farewell. Hail to the element of air, of the east. Blow us clean. Release. Let the winds of time clean and free our souls. Hail and farewell.
Hail and farewell. We visualize the circle that we cast earlier, dissolving into light. The energy is dispersed. Our intention is set. By the air of her breath, fire of her spirit, the water of her womb, the earth of her body. The circle is broken, but unbroken. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Blessed be.
Blessed be.